Microsoft Dynamics 365 is one of the most popular ERP solutions in the marketplace, but what exactly is D365 and is it the right fit for you? I'm going to talk about that here in today's video. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformation journeys, and many of our clients implement Microsoft Dynamics 365. It's one of the most common ERP systems in the marketplace. It's owned by Microsoft, which is obviously a very well-known company, and it's one of the top 3 software vendors in terms of market share, especially for small and mid-sized companies. So what I want to do today is talk about what is Dynamics 365, is it a good fit for you, and where is it the best fit for organizations? So to fully understand what D365 is, it helps to look at the history of Microsoft Dynamics and Dynamics 365. So about 20 years ago, when Microsoft started really pushing into the business technology and enterprise software space, they went out and they acquired a few different companies. Companies like Navision, Great Plains, Exapta. Those were all standalone ERP systems that were acquired and eventually rolled into the umbrella of Microsoft Dynamics. And for several years, Microsoft allowed these 3 systems to coexist under the Microsoft Dynamics umbrella, under their original brand names of Great Plains, Exapta, Navision. And eventually, they came out with their current flagship offering, which is Microsoft Dynamics 365. And essentially what they've done here is they've combined the best of those acquisitions and those legacy solutions to create a more common system that stands alone as Dynamics 365. It's also a solution that has been built in the cloud, and so it's meant for cloud deployments. It was one of the early adopters of cloud deployments. And Dynamics 365 has 2 different primary products, or sub-products, if you will. One is called Business Central, Dynamics 365 Business Central, and that is the solution for smaller and mid-market companies. It's the more vanilla solution for simpler organizations, those that aren't looking for a big, heavy ERP implementation, and ones that are looking for a lower cost option. Business Central can be a good fit in those cases. In other cases, they also provide D365 Finance and Operations, which Finance and Operations is sort of the bigger ERP solution that's meant to compete with SAP and Oracle and some of the other larger ERP vendors. So typically multinational companies and larger, more complex organizations will deploy the Finance and Operations version of Microsoft D365, while the smaller counterparts will typically implement Business Central. I recently published a video that provides a more in-depth review of Dynamics 365. What I'd like to do here today is summarize some of the strengths and weaknesses of the product. Starting with the strengths, one of the biggest strengths of the product is that it's flexible. When you compare it to other systems in the marketplace, it's generally going to be more flexible. It's something that can be configured in a number of different ways, and it can also be customized in a number of different ways as well, which could be a good or a bad thing. So that sort of flexibility is one of the big advantages of D365, as is its open architecture. The Dynamics platform was originally built on the .NET platform, which is a very open architecture that's meant to integrate third-party systems, and it's a way to tie together multiple systems into the platform. So if you're a company that has multiple legacy systems and you're looking for flexibility and integration to other systems, D365 can be a great fit. A couple of the disadvantages of the product, however, are that, first of all, the flexibility itself can be both a strength and a weakness. And what I mean by that is the flexibility of the product can also become overwhelming to organizations and project teams. It can be very difficult to decide how you want to configure the software because you have so many options. And many organizations and project teams get tangled up in all the options that they have in deploying the solution. The same goes for the ease of customization and the ability to customize. The fact that you can customize the solution and you can be flexible in the way you deploy it doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And so what we find with D365 implementations oftentimes is that the flexibility ends up becoming a cover or a cover-up for all the change management issues that your organization may have in its ability to change. And the final weakness of the product is that it is a product that isn't as robust as some may need in certain industries or in certain diverse operations. So for example, if you're an organization that has very complex manufacturing needs, there's probably better products out there that can handle some of your manufacturing needs. Same for warehouse management. If you're a high volume, complex distribution company, it may be tested or stressed by the needs that you have as an organization. So when evaluating D365, you really want to make sure you pressure test some of those outlying capabilities and the outlying business processes, especially as it relates to your secret sauce or your competitive advantage related business processes. When evaluating Microsoft Dynamics 365, it's helpful to understand the ecosystem of Microsoft. And what I mean by ecosystem is the supporting organizations and the supporting environment that allows you to use third parties to deploy the software. So Microsoft generally doesn't sell their software directly to consumers or end organizations. What they generally do is rely on third-party VARs or value-added resellers. These are organizations that are third-party partners of Microsoft, and their intent and focus is to implement Microsoft D365. Now, this is a good thing because it gives organizations a lot of different options, a lot of different resources in the marketplace that can help you deploy the product. The downside is that there's so many different options in the marketplace that there's a lot of variation in the capabilities of the different VARs and resellers that are out there. So you really want to vet those resellers carefully and make sure that you're navigating the sort of fragmented ecosystem carefully. Now, the other dimension that is both a strength and a weakness of the Microsoft ecosystem is they have what's called ISVs, or independent software vendors. And these, again, are third-party organizations that not only implement Microsoft D365, but in most cases, they've also built some sort of unique capability on top of D365. So you might have an industry-specific solution that takes the D365 platform and tailors it for a specific industry, and that IP or that intellectual property is only offered by that one ISV. So again, it's a pro and a con, because in one hand, it allows you to find a very specific version of Dynamics 365, but on the flip side, it's also exposing you to a third party that may or may not be a good fit for your organization, and it creates just yet another option that you have to choose from. The other thing that this calls into question is that with ISVs, they're the only ones that can support that version of the software. So you've somewhat limited your options in terms of who can support that specific version of Dynamics 365. So in general, if you're looking for something that's both has the capability of a broad, big ERP system, but is also tailored for your industry or your specific needs, then Microsoft D365 can be a great fit for you. Now, the Dynamics 365 product rates fairly high in terms of its general functionality and capabilities. It can provide a very broad set of capabilities and business processes and workflows to help automate your business, but implementing the solution is a different story. Sometimes implementing can be very difficult, it can be challenging. I've mentioned the fact that the flexibility of the product can actually create problems during implementation if you don't have strong project governance and you don't have a strong vision of what you want of the product. So that's one thing to watch for, is the flexibility of the product is mostly a strength, but it can create risks and challenges during implementation. The other challenge of Microsoft Dynamics 365 implementations is that, as I mentioned before, the flexibility of the product can actually mask some of the change management issues that you may be facing within your organization. So in other words, just because you can change the software to do what you want it to do or the way you might operate today doesn't mean that you should. So what ends up happening oftentimes is we see clients who are resisting change, who want to keep doing things the way they always have, but use a new software to do it, and they end up changing the software just to automate the way they've always done things. So that's a dynamic you really want to watch for, and Dynamics 365 implementations tend to require even more change management support than other ERP systems. And finally, another challenge with D365 implementations is that because of the flexibility and the architecture, the open integration, all the advantages on the technical side, it ends up creating a myopic focus on the technology. You end up focusing resources on the technology pieces of the transformation rather than the more important operational and organizational pieces. So that's a pitfall you want to watch for, is don't let the flexibility and the complexity of the product suck you into a focus strictly on the technology, because ultimately it's the people and process side of the equation that will ultimately make you successful. So these are a few of the things to think about as you consider a Dynamics 365 implementation. Now, to be successful in your Microsoft Dynamics 365 transformation, I encourage you to download our definitive guide to a successful Dynamics 365 implementation. This guide lays out some of the best practices and lessons learned from our experience helping clients implement Dynamics 365. But in summary or in general, some of the things that you want to think about are, first of all, make sure that D365 is the right fit for you. Make sure you've evaluated it against other options in the marketplace. Once you've chosen the software, if you do decide that D365 is the right fit for you, make sure that you have a solid implementation strategy and plan that addresses some of the risks and pitfalls that we've talked about here today. And probably more than anything, make sure that you have solid change management. You have a very clear change management strategy that's meant to address some of the challenges we've talked about here today. And for other best practices, again, I encourage you to download that white paper that I've included links to below. I've also included links to other resources that are meant to help you through your digital transformation journey, so I encourage you to check that out below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.